The Zweihander was the most dramatic of all medieval swords. Some stretched nearly 2 meters in length, carried by German mercenaries known as Landsknechts. Their job was to break into enemy pike formations, swinging the blade in wide arcs to batter spears aside and open paths for troops behind them. Wielding such a weapon was risky. Its size left little margin for error, but in skilled hands it could dominate a battlefield. The Zweihander also carried status. Soldiers trusted with one were often paid extra for the danger they faced. Part weapon, part symbol, it was built to impress as much as it was to kill. The arming sword was the everyday blade of the knight. Shorter than the massive two-handers, usually around 70 to 80 centimeters. It was designed for one hand and carried with a shield. Light, versatile, and easy to wear at the hip, it was reliable in every sense. Knights used it for cutting, thrusting, and parrying, making it the backbone of medieval combat. Unlike the Zweihander, it wasn't rare or specialized. This was the sword most soldiers actually depended on. Simple in form, but dependable in battle, the arming sword became the true symbol of the knightly class. The Greatsword was a weapon of reach and intimidation. Often measuring more than 140 centimeters, it was carried across the shoulder, not at the side. In battle, it was used for heavy, sweeping strikes to break enemy lines or disrupt pike formations. It wasn't meant for close duels or castle corridors. It was a battlefield weapon through and through. Soldiers who could handle its size and weight commanded attention, as the Greatsword's wide arcs could clear space in chaotic fighting. Handling one demanded strength and discipline, but when used well, it was one of the most imposing sights on the medieval field. The Falchion stood apart from the elegant straight swords of knights. It was short, heavy, and single-edged, shaped more like a cleaver. What it lacked in refinement, it made up for in sheer cutting power. The blade could chop through armour and bone, making it devastating in close combat. Its design would have been familiar to common soldiers, resembling the tools they used in daily work. That made it cheaper and more accessible, especially compared to the finely crafted weapons of the nobility. Brutal and practical, the Falchion blurred the line between tool and weapon, not a status piece, but a soldier's workhorse. The longsword became one of the most respected weapons of the late Middle Ages. Longer in both blade and grip than the arming sword, it was used with two hands for greater reach and control. Despite its size, it remained surprisingly light, usually under 1.5 kilograms. Combat manuals from the 14th and 15th centuries reveal how advanced longsword technique was. Fighters use it for thrusts, cuts, grappling, and even striking with the hilt or blade in reverse. This was a weapon of skill as much as strength, valued by knights and duelists alike. Balanced, versatile, and lethal in trained hands, the longsword defined late medieval combat. The executioner's sword had nothing to do with the battlefield. Broad, heavy, and double-handed, it had a blunt tip and was designed purely for beheadings. These swords were used in public ceremonies where executions were meant to display the power of the law. Their design reflected that purpose, large enough to deliver a single, decisive stroke, and imposing enough to send a message to the crowd. They were grim instruments, remembered less for their craftsmanship and more for the role they played in enforcing justice. Unlike other swords, the executioner's blade was feared not for how it fought, but for what it represented. The Cutlass shows how swords adapted to life at sea. Short, sturdy, and easy to handle, it was perfect for the cramped decks of ships, where long blades were more of a hindrance than an advantage. With its broad, single-edged blade and protective guard, it could slash quickly and defend the hand in close quarters. Sailors, privateers, and pirates all favoured it, not just for practicality, but for the speed it gave them in sudden fights. The Cutlass was a weapon of survival in tight, chaotic environments, where reaction time mattered more than reach. It was the sword of sailors, built for speed and space. The rapier reflects the changing world of the late 16th century. Long, narrow, and designed for thrusting, it was not a knight's battlefield weapon, but a civilian sidearm. It became the sword of duels, self-defense, and social status. With ornate hilts and elegant design, the rapier was as much fashion as it was function. Fencing schools flourished, and mastery of the rapier was seen as a mark of refinement. Unlike the brute force of the Zweihander or Greatsword, the rapier was about speed, precision, and style. It marked the point where the sword moved away from war and toward personal honour and reputation. And while there were many more kinds of swords in history, from regional styles to experimental designs, these examples show just how diverse the sword could be, never just one weapon, but many.